Committee meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee, so order. Budget, Finance, and Property and Facilities. So order. Good morning. We are reconvening our recessed meeting from yesterday. We're on item 3 on the agenda. Tim Jones is in the well, and let's get going. Item 3, Mr. Jones.
Good morning, sir, and thank you very much. Item 3, if you'll turn to page 7 of your packet, and actually starting on page 9, these are the operating budgets for various university auxiliary facilities that have bond covenants that require approval of a 2009-10 operating budget. And these are mostly your parking, housing facilities. Staff have reviewed these income and expenditure statements from the universities. Is this on?
I can barely hear you, Tim.
Is it on? Okay. We have reviewed the statements, and they should have sufficient revenues to cover their operations and their debt service for next fiscal year. So we'd ask the committee to approve these budgets.
Okay, we've all been briefed on these. Anyone have any questions for Tim with regard to the auxiliary facilities and bond covenants? If not, I'd accept the motion to approve the estimated 2009-2010 operating budgets for auxiliary facilities that have bond covenants requiring our approval as presented. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries. Tim, item 4.
Item 4 starts on page 27. This is the 2010-11 legislative budget request guidelines. There are strike-throughs and underlines, so you can see the changes. The operating section has minimal changes. The facilities section was discussed at the facilities meeting back in January. There haven't been any changes since then, so we'd ask both committees to approve the guidelines for the next budget cycle.
Great. We've been through these several times. Moved by Governor Edwards. Is there a second? Second. Second. The motion will read: approve the 2010-2011 legislative budget request development guidelines for the operating and fixed capital outlay budget, and authorize the president and residents to make technical amendments and adjustments based upon the 09-10 legislative appropriations. So motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. And opposed, motion carries. Are there any questions? Since yesterday the Senate met, we announced quickly in the beginning of the meeting the Senate's budget, which was wonderful for the state university system, held us harmless from any cuts, 8% tuition increase, medical school incremental funding, 91% fund in the package, pretty much everything we could have hoped for. Are there any questions for Tim with regard to the status of the budget, the current budget, the process procedures? Governor Parker.
I had a question. You told me again yesterday about the staffing issues that we're going to, or proposed staffing cuts that we may have to face based upon the proposed budget cut.
The Senate recommendation was to cut about $650,000 out of our salary line. They recommended 2 positions. Of course, we don't have 2 positions that total $650,000 in raise. So we will have to come up with other additional cuts to equal that $650,000, and the estimate would be between 10 and 15 positions to get to that number.
And this is, did you say the number 18 before? But the last, I guess you kind of gave a cumulative impact.
The last 2 years we have lost 18% of our budget and positions. That have been 12 positions over the last 2 years and $1.2 million. Their proposal for next year is a 15% cut, a total of $750,000, with $650,000 coming from our salaries.
Of the numbers that we're talking, at one point we had some unfilled positions that it was always easier to deal with. Are we finding ourselves in a position now that if we are faced with the numbers that you're talking about, that these are positions that are actually occupied at this point?
Yes, ma'am. We have 3 vacant positions at the moment. One of those is the chancellor's position. Another one is a vice chancellor, and another one is a budget analyst. So we just had someone retire in January. So we have those 3 vacancies. Everything else is filled.
We probably need to fill at least one of those.
As soon as possible. And my other question is, I know that the Senate and the House generally take different approaches on how they deal with budget cuts. The way that our agency is likely to be impacted, is that similar to, I guess, everyone else across the board, or is it, something, can you talk to me about whether or not we're facing the same issues that everybody else is facing, or is it something special as it relates to those cuts?
It's my understanding that they treated us just like they did the Department of Education in terms of a 15% across-the-board cut. I've heard that other agencies may be treated a little bit differently. They have different committee chairs and so forth. So I have not seen those official numbers, but there is discussion about treating education differently than other agencies.
And treating education differently and making more cuts, or fewer?
Well, a different percentage of cuts.
A higher or lower?
I've heard that our percentage is higher than a lot of the other entities, but I have not been able to confirm that yet.
Okay. I guess, President Delaney, do you have any thoughts on whether that's something that we're going to be stuck with? Can we have some control over it? It just seems pretty drastic to me, based upon everything else that's going on, that we're this great entity that brings in so much economic development to the state university, to the state, and yet our budget just seems to be impacted more than some of the other entities.
I think we're going to be able to get the number down. The overall budget is off 25%, and so if there wasn't the stimulus money, or that there isn't new revenue, that would mean everybody would have to get cut 25%. And so it's a huge number. And I was a little surprised it was the number that it was, based on conversations that I'd had with leadership. But I'm almost certain we're going to be able to reduce that pretty substantially.
And do we know whether or not, I know this is the Senate side, do we know what the House is looking like?
The House will release their budget next week, so we'll know then.
Other questions for Tim Jones?
Mr. Chair, could I just say?
Absolutely, Madam Chair.
I see that President Law from Tallahassee Community College has just walked in, and while he's here, I wanted to take the opportunity to thank him very much for hosting us and tell him we're very happy with your facility, and we might just come back again if you could stand it. But we thank you so much, and it was pretty easy to work with. Y'all were very easy to work with, very accommodating, and we appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's our pleasure to have you here. We don't often have university presidents on campus. That's great. It is, Madam Chairman, an easy campus to get around. You just ask for whether on building A, whether on building B. Madam Chairman, thank you. Please come back. You're welcome to university.
Okay, well, thank you again, and you've been so gracious.
Thank you.
I have a question. The Senate bill is 8% tuition increase. And in addition, is there the additional tuition included in that?
No, that bill is still moving to the legislature.
That bill is still moving, but they did include in their budget the assumption that everyone would do an additional 7% differential.
Right.
So that assumption is in there at 7%, not at 15.
Well, that's 8
Total of
and 7.
8.
So that's where they get that.
Correct.
From what I understood, from what I understood yesterday from Senator Lynn, the 8% is included in Bright Futures. Bright Futures, the 8% that was recommended are, it is the Bright Futures. Then the 7% above that, or whatever, would be decided by the Board of Trustees, would be beyond, would be above Bright Futures.
Other questions for Mr. Jones? Seeing none, I'll pass the gavel to the chair of the Appropriate Facilities Committee, and she'll continue the meeting.
Thank you very much, Governor Perez. We're going to ask Mr. Kinsley if he would come to the microphone to address item number 5 on the agenda, please, which is the 0910 fixed capital outlay legislative budget request.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members, presidents. members of the audience. Madam Chair, did you say you wanted me to address item number 5?
I think that's where we are, Mr. Kinsley, right?
Yes, thank you very much. Members, in your package, we're currently on agenda item, it's on page 33. In your packets, you'll find page 34 and page 35. You may disregard these pages. We've provided replacement pages for 34 and 35. If you allow me, first we'll go to attachment 1, revised. This is a request for projects requiring legislative authorization. This is a one-pager. It says at the top, right at can corner, attachment 1, revised. Yes. What this is, these are requests from 3 universities to change previous allocations. So it's a shift from one project to the other. These, we have not acted upon these before, and this is the language as it would appear in the General Appropriations Act. And the only change was on the very last item for University of North Florida. Instead of being from the Education Building to Founders Hall, it's from Education Building to the Utilities Infrastructure Capital Renewal Roofs line. And I'd be happy to address any questions on this attachment.
Any questions for Mr. Kinsley? If not, I entertain a motion to approve amendments as proposed to the 09-2010 SUS 6 capital outlay legislative budget request. Is there a second? Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Item number 6, Mr. Kinsley.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, we're moving so quickly. There is an attachment 2.
Okay, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Again, this is revised, it's not in your package, this replaces page 34. Just again, for those who might have not been here yesterday, the PICO Revenue Estimating Conference on March 16th met, dropped PICO very dramatically. We've worked very closely with the universities ever since that date, once we had our revised allocation, to drop the allocation. As you see, the allocation dropped in year 1, 34%, year 2, 56%, year 3, 41%, which is a dramatic decrease. And as Tim said, this is the lowest PICO number in recollection. I've gone back 20 years. This is the lowest PICO number for the state university system, if it stands as it is. So I know this is very disappointing to all the universities and, of course, all our membership. Each university took the same percentage of cut, and this is, every project on here reflects the university's priorities within that cut. And I'd be happy to address any questions on this list.
And this is the document that should have been placed at our desk when we got here this morning.
Yes, ma'am.
That's the most recent document. Any questions about the revisions? Governor Edwards.
So that I understand this now, the far right-hand column, current proposed PICO funding with cuts 209, 210 is what we actually expect to receive?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Unfortunately, we got a little bit ahead of ourselves, and we approved the motion. We actually approved attachment 1 and 2 before Chris had an opportunity to speak about it. Any problems with us moving forward with the approval that was previously put in place? I apologize. So I'm number 6, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're now on item 6, page 36. This is a positive item, I'm pleased to say, and this is for the University of West Florida. This is the first debt issue that's come before the board since the liquidity crisis in the fall, when the credit markets basically froze up across the country and across the world. So I'm very pleased to see University of West Florida moving forward with this issue. In your packet, it requests authorization to either issue bonds or a loan. The university, I believe, has settled on the loan option. It's a fixed-rate loan at a very good rate of 5.09%. So I give kudos to the university for that. This is in compliance with their debt guidelines, and the appropriate comments from the Division of Bond Finance and staff are there, and members have been briefed. I'd be happy to address any questions on the item.
I hear, I guess there were no questions. I hear a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
before we take a vote, Dr. Finch, you have anything like to say about the project at all?
I'm just real happy about it. You know, with getting a bank loan at 5.09 for 20 years fixed, I mean, who would have thought? And we're really pleased with it. You're going to get more bang for your buck building right now, you know, more amenities than you thought you would. We're ready to break ground if it's the will of the board.
Any questions, Mr. Kinsley or Dr. Benz? Not all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The opposition. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Item number 7, Mr. Kinsley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This starts on page 49. We discussed this at our January meeting, the work group that has been working very closely with the board staff on revising the entire Chapter 1, the campus master plan regulations, as part of the overall board effort to revise all the old regulations of the former Board of Regents. So not to belabor the point, I just want to provide special recognition to all those who served on the work group, which is on page 59. It was headed by Steve Pfeiffer, Chair, General Counsel at New College, Robert Jones, that is staffed this from the Florida Center for Conflict Resolutions. As Tim mentioned yesterday, they're in the Senate budget. They've zeroed out their budget, I believe. But that's one of the examples of a project they've done to assist the board on this. Ken Ogletree from staff. And I won't recognize all the groups, but I do want to recognize those who from the university community. Mark Bertolami from FSU, Scott Cole from UCF, Linda Dixon from UF, Barbara Donnerly from USF, Tom Donati from FAU, and David Cayenne from FAU. So we appreciate all their work. They've met many, many times. This is a consensus document, and it's now up for first notice. And I'd be happy to address any questions about the campus master plan proposed amendments to our current regulations.
Any questions for Mr. Kinsley on this item? If not, I entertain the motion to approve notice of intent to amend and renumber current Board of Governors Chapter 21 regulations on campus master planning as presented.
Move it.
Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And item number 8, Mr. Kinsley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is another item that was discussed at our January meeting, and following our process, we had worked very closely with the universities on the administration of the leasing program. We worked closely, especially with the general counsels. Once it was actually formally published, we had a few minor comments. We thought, in the abundance of caution, we would renotice it with those changes noted. So this is up again for, it's for first notice, but this will be the second time we've done that.
Is there a second?
Sorry.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Kinsley. And I want to thank the presence, as kind of going back to item number 5, as Mr. Kinsley stated, that this is the toughest year we've ever had with our PICO list. But thank you for understanding that and working within the numbers and doing the best that we can to maintain our campuses and move forward wherever possible in very difficult times. Do you have any other closing comments, Mr. Correct?
None other than if we get an opportunity to visit with the Senate or the House, let's remind them how much we appreciate their support of trying to hold us harmless, at least on the university budgets this cycle. Hugely important. They've come in and backfilled. They've seen the light on tuition, thanks in great part to our students and AJ and his team for stepping up and doing what they needed to do. And if we can survive this session being held harmless this cycle, and maybe find a little bit more money for the board budget, it would be a really bright year for us in light of everything else going on. So if you get a chance to talk to any of our legislative friends, let them know how much we appreciate the new approach.
All right. With that, meeting adjourned.